Okay, so a couple days ago I published my top 5 works of fiction this year, but I also read a ton of nonfiction this year, and a lot of it was worth recommending. So if you want to see the video I made about the top 5 fiction books of the year, click the card in the corner or the link in the description. Of the 104 books that I read this year, about 35 of them were nonfiction. So this is the list of my top 5 nonfiction this year. We've got history, science, culture, memoir. There was just a lot of really good writing this year. To give this list some structure, I'm going to use a big poster that I keep in my classroom, and we're going to follow it down and discuss the books that I read in the order that I read them. So we're going to start with a book by George Saunders called A Swim in the Pond in the Rain. If you love literature, then I think it is safe to say that you will love this book. George Saunders is a master of his craft, and he's been teaching others how to do it for a long time. In this book, he goes through a close reading of some of his favorite short stories by Russian authors and explains how and why they work as stories. It's a love song to storytelling, and it's a particularly great book for anybody who teaches literature or wants to try writing. Next up is a very different kind of book, Codebreakers, Jennifer Doudna, Gene Editing, and the Future of the Human Race by Walter Isaacson. And I'm really happy that I took the time to read it. With all the misinformation this year about mRNA vaccines, not to mention the publication of Clara and the Sun about gene editing, it was refreshing to learn about the history of gene editing and its pioneers by a world-class biographer and science writer. The book didn't just teach me about the science behind these technologies, it also gave me further insight into how scientific communities operate, collaborate, and finance themselves. Fascinating stuff that also seems like important stuff. From literature to science, and now I'm going to talk about a history book. How the Word is Passed by Clint Smith is definitely the best work of history that I read this year. The author travels to various sites across the United States and looks at the way that the history of the land is communicated. What parts of the landscape are highlighted or set apart, how and why sites have been preserved, and specifically how plantations in the South communicate their past. This isn't just a book about U.S. history. It's about how U.S. history works, how historical knowledge itself is produced, which I have to mention is relevant to the next video that I'm going to publish on this channel about the artwork of Julie Marduk. I also want to note here that Clint Smith, the author of How the Word is Passed, is just a fantastic writer. He makes this book a sort of quest narrative, and he considers all of his subjects with a combination of complexity and compassion. 5 stars. Would recommend it to literally everyone. And now, to a memoir. Alison Bechdel's memoir about her lifelong obsession with exercise is a graphic novel memoir, and it's funny, intelligent, emotional. Even though she's a bit older than me and exists in different communities than I do, it also had a sense of nostalgia for me, especially once she got to the 1990s and 2000s. She weaves together stories of those times with stories of Margaret Fuller, William Wordsworth, Jack Kerouac, and others to help her tell the story of her own quest to find physical strength and mental stability through all sorts of exercise fads. Anybody who's met me for more than one conversation knows that I love the essays of Montaigne, and this book, for me, felt like a modern-day Montaigne writing a series of essays in cartoon form. She pulls wisdom from all sorts of sources, and it's an entire book about exercise that never once mentions weight or body image. It's just about routines, aging, community, and mental health. And finally, the last book in this list is Maggie Nelson's book On Freedom. I pre-order everything that Maggie Nelson writes, and this 4-part meditation on the concept of freedom, it didn't disappoint. It's her characteristic intellectual rigor, breadth of knowledge, and emotional honesty on display on every single page. The essays are about freedom in art, freedom in gender, freedom in drugs, and what freedom means within the discourse on climate change. Each of the essays made me a better thinker, and that's just what Maggie Nelson's writing does. Looking back on it, that's a strange collection of books, but it has a little bit of everything, so I hope there was something on there that you're interested in reading or passing on to somebody during the holidays. Next year I'll focus more on output, read less. Next month I've got a new video on the abstract landscapes of Julie Marduk. I hope you'll check it out. Thank you for watching.